Really excited to be here with John Assaraf and everyone that is part of our community is a big law of attraction and secret fan, and so I'm sure everyone is familiar with John and John's message and John's story. And we're going to learn about how to train our brain to create what we want in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything that we've ever created on Earth, anything we've solved, every problem starts with something that's going on in our heads, right? And so I've been fascinated with the brain. I've been fascinated with what creates our thoughts, what's the difference between thoughts and thinking, what's the difference between beliefs, what are habits, what are the mental faculties of the brain. And I've just been fascinated with that question. I've just wanted to understand more about how to use my brain better. And it all started when I just had to learn how to overcome feelings like I wasn't smart enough, like I wasn't good enough, like I wasn't going to achieve success in my life. And tracing it back to where did that begin? Where did that come from? Because there isn't a child that's born with, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worthy. There isn't a child born with that belief or that pattern. So I just got really fascinated with trying to understand, like, at least what science can share with me. Mm-hmm. And lots of answers are coming up now, that's the exciting part, right? So many answers about the brain are coming up, and there isn't a human being ever in 2.5 million years of humans being on Earth and 110 billion people having been on Earth already. There isn't anybody who was born with a user's manual for the brain.
And so when there's so many people that are a fan of the law of attraction and the secret, and you rarely hear people talk about the brain, but you hear people talk about affirmations or visualizations or your subconscious mind. How is there a tie-in between visualizing? How does that type of work affect your brain?
I love this topic. So when we have a goal or a vision for what we want to achieve, and we close our eyes, or even with our eyes open, we see ourselves, we experience ourselves achieving that. We know from all the latest brain scan imaging research and technology, we know that the occipital lobe, a part of the brain, a big part of the brain, activates. When we are engaging in that reality, even though we're imagining it, we know that there's something called the nucleus accumbens and insula. The motivational center of the brain lights up like a Christmas tree and releases dopamine and releases all these feel-good chemicals. And we know when that happens, the left prefrontal cortex of the brain lights up. And what's that? Well, that's the part of your brain that's your GPS that connects to all the universal intelligence. It's the Einstein part of the brain that can figure out, how can I make this vision, this goal that I have no idea how to achieve, how can I actually make that happen? So the functioning of the brain, when you're visualizing, when you're emotionalizing and feeling what it's like to live in that new reality, you start to develop these new patterns in the brain that don't exist for most people. And when you repeat those patterns 2 times, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times, 500 times, your brain's pretty smart. It says, hey, listen, you're doing this a lot. Let me just make that a normal subconscious pattern. And you don't have to think about it anymore very often. I'll just run that program. And that's where the magic happens.
So that's what's happening in your brain when you're listening to a hypnosis or an affirmation and you do it diligently for a long period of time. That's a science behind the law of attraction.
Yeah. So, if you think about, you have your biceps, and you can write with your arm, and you could paint, and you could pick things up, and you could hit somebody, and that's the function for your bicep. But you can't do the same thing with your leg easily. So every muscle, has a different use in our body. Together they work to create a body, and we can walk and hike and bike and talk and eat and all that stuff. Well, let's talk about our brain. Well, our conscious part of the brain, if you think about the conscious part of the brain as a muscle, just for argument's sake, just as a neuromuscle. So the conscious part of the brain is responsible for deductive reasoning. Do I want this or do I want that? Do I want to go here or do I want to go there? So it's responsible for imagination. So I want to imagine what it's like to go to Paris and to be on one of the gondolas and to have a little baguette and maybe a cigar. So I can use imagination. That's a mental faculty, a conscious function. But the conscious part of our brain isn't responsible to regulate my heartbeat. It's not responsible to divide my cells, to create new cells as 10 million die off every second. It's not responsible to grow my hair. That's the subconscious responsibility. So there are responsibilities and different neuromuscles for different functions. We've never been taught that. So if the job of the conscious mind is to choose what I want, but it's the job of the subconscious mind to make it happen long term if it requires consistent energy, develops habits, so that you have to think about it because it wants to conserve energy. So there's the mechanics of how the brain works, that when you know how to use it better, you start to be in flow. You start to work with how things are supposed to be instead of trying to lug around 100 pounds of weights with you everywhere you go, and everything's really hard for you. It's hard because most people don't have the right process. They have the tool, but they're not using it the right way.
So when someone says the law of attraction or visualization doesn't work, is what's happening the reason that it's not? Is it because there's old neural connections that are firing in old ways, and then the new connection hasn't formed, so that's why it feels like an uphill battle? He's
so good at this, right? He's so good. So let's think of it like that, and let's understand patterns in the brain. So the brain's got brain waves. We've got 50 different brain waves going on at any given time. Alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma, combination of every type of brain wave. In a relaxed hypnosis state, we're mostly in alpha, and we can get into delta, and maybe even some gamma, and some subdelta, and some theta. So we can deactivate beta and move more into an alpha state, which is a more receptive state. But what happens with the law of attraction people, where they think, believe, and you'll achieve. Okay, well, that might be phase one, but if everything you thought about and everything you believed at the superficial level became true, most guys would be women because that's what they think about most of the time. And most people would have everything that they don't want happening all over the place. So let's get a little more sophisticated than hopeful thinking. So let's say that I ask you, do you think you have the ability to make $1 million?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So he consciously thought about it and declared that. But what if underneath, okay, let's go, that's conscious. You consciously answer that. But let's say underneath, because of years of conditioning, you might have this little voice that goes, but am I good enough to do that? Do I have the skills? Like, am I really smart enough? What if I fail? What if I disappoint my fiance because I try so hard? We put all our best efforts to it. What if I succeed and fail? What if I'm embarrassed? What if I'm ashamed? What if I'm ridiculed by my friends? What if all that happens? Well, that's happening underneath you saying, yes, I can. Well, if you have one part of your brain going, yes, I can, and this other part of your brain going, well, what if all that other stuff happens? You have chaos in the brain. And a brain in chaos will default to what's comfortable.
So it'll default to an old neural
connection? Yes. So a brain in chaos will default to what's comfortable, your existing patterns. So the whole key to getting the law of attraction to work is to get coherence in the brain. You get the conscious thinking, imagination part of the brain connected to the feeling, emotional part of the brain, the beliefs, the habits, the perceptions, the behaviors, the emotional management that deactivates or activates certain circuits in the brain. If you can get coherence in the brain, then that means 100 trillion little cells, little robots, vibrate and oscillate at the level of the coherence. So let me put it a different way. Let's say you want to hear rock and roll music. And we're in San Diego now, and you go, well, okay, rock and roll is at 95.5. Well, what if you go to 95.5 and just a little bit? You have static. And if you go a little bit too far, you might have rock and roll, or you might have jazz at 95.6. So from a brain perspective and just creating coherence in the field that we're all in, if you can lock conscious and non-conscious and then activate behavior, now we are in resonance. We're in harmony. But if you're off the mark, it's just wishful thinking, people say. Well, it's wishful thinking for you because you don't understand the process. Learn the process. And this also means that you don't just say, think, believe, achieve, and I can do it and all that stuff. oh, you want to make $1 million? Well, there's laws of earning money. There's a law of exchange. Money is a means of exchange. I'm going to give you X, you're going to give me Y. We used to use coins, chocolate, livestock, grains to exchange. Hey, will you fix my shoes? I'll give you some milk. Hey, will you take this chocolate? I'll take your kid down to the apprentice. We use it as a means of exchange. So if you want money, you have to understand the laws of compensation. If you don't understand the laws of compensation, I don't care how positive you are. And for every level of money that you want to make, whether it's 10,000, 100,000, a million, or 10, there's a way of thinking. There's a way of feeling. There's beliefs you need to have, habits you need to have, and strategies, tactics that you have to implement to garner that exchange. And if anything in that loop is out of whack, that would be like me saying to you, you want $10 million? There's $10 million in my safe right there. Here are the 4 numbers to open up that safe. And you go and try. And you go, what's the order of which the numbers have got to be in there? Oh, you mean they have to be in the right order? Yes, it has to be in the fucking right order. Or the safe doesn't open up. So mindset, skill set, and action set have got to be aligned. And then you're in flow.
So the goal is coherence.
Coherence. There you go. Versus chaos. Coherence and harmony is in flow. Right?
One time I heard somebody say that the brain and the nervous system are really an electronic switching board.
It's your brain's an electromagnetic switching station. So if you think about it, everybody's watching us right now. I am 100 trillion cells that are vibrating. The light from my body is traveling through the lens, right, and being captured. If there was a snake over there, a snake wouldn't see our body. A snake would feel our energy field. So we are allowing light through our eyes. Our brain is deciphering what this thing called, I've learned this is a body. I've learned that this body's name is. I've learned everything about this. So we are hearing sound waves that are being put through our brain's processor to understand, oh, that's music, that's my fan, that's this, that's that. When I eat, when I hear, when I see, smell, taste, and touch, those are all inputs. There's stuff that's inputted into the brain. The brain is electromagnetic switching station, deciphers what that is, and that causes certain emotions and feelings.
So when someone says that you don't see with your eyes,
because you see your brain, it's your brain that sees. Your eyes just allow light through it.
And then is that, one way that I would take that in my mind would be, okay, that's empowering then, because someone can say, hey, I want to make more money, right? Like we're here, we're talking about your Brain-A-Thon, which we'll invite everyone to check it out. I was on it last year. It was amazing. And someone might be listening to this and they're saying whether it's a soulmate or more money or what have you. And what happens is, right, we get stuck in what is consciousness. And, one interesting thing about your work is it makes you be able to see that if you don't even see with your eyes, then that number in my bank account or that empty side of my bed, it's not actually real. It's just, what is it actually? What is that result? It's not real, is it? Yeah. Because if you don't see with your eyes, then...
Right. So visual that I like to give people, since we're talking about eyes, imagine you're sitting in a movie theater and you're watching a movie on a big screen in front of you. Right. And you don't like what's happening on the screen. You don't go to the screen and scratch it out. If you want to change the movie on the screen of what you're watching, go change what's happening in the projection room. What's on the disc? So not only are we getting input in through our eyes, but we're also projecting the patterns of our brain onto the canvas. If you don't like how much money you're making, change the fucking program. You don't like the relationship, change the program. Sorry for swearing, but
it's actually
kind
cool.
of like,
you get to see John Assaraf in real life.
This is the stuff I'm so passionate about because people think it's happening out there. There is no out there and in here. It's one field. So you're only seeing what you're conditioned to see. You're only experiencing. You only have what you have conditioned yourself or have been conditioned to see or have. Change what the projector is projecting out. So when you talk about visualization, when you start to visualize in here and you see yourself having, being, doing, giving, becoming, receiving, and you play that movie out in here, it suddenly shows up out there because it's always been there, but you've just been blocking it out because of the way the brain works. The brain doesn't allow, this stream of consciousness for, of everything that's happening in this room. We're absorbing about 400 billion bits of information per second, but we're only aware of a fraction of it. Your brain distorts or deletes everything that doesn't match the internal map you already have. Change the map. All of a sudden the canvas changes.
So it's like when someone they start having a little bit different thoughts, and all of a sudden they see the opportunity that has always been there, but they never noticed because the brain was deleting all those things based on projection.
And that's the kind of stuff that,
Isn't that exciting? Right? Is everyone
so
listening exciting right now?
That's why I got so excited. I started learning this 35 years ago.
So
and it changed my life.
Is this while you were in real estate?
I got into real estate when I was 19. I didn't have any idea how to real estate, schmeal estate. I have no idea. But I started to see myself. I started to visualize and affirmations and do a whole bunch of stuff. Now the technology has gone through the roof where we can...
How long do you think it takes for someone, you get people that say, I've used that, or I listen to the hypnosis, or I visualize, or I do my affirmations. How long does it take? Is there any type of science behind how long it takes for new neural connections to form?
Well, a new neural connection forms all the time.
Oh.
So it's called neuroplasticity. We've been talking a lot about that on the Brain-A-Thon. I've got some world-renowned experts on neuroplasticity. So think about this. If you went right now and take your little pinky, stick it in the socket right now. Okay, right now. Most of you will say, I'm not doing that. Why? Well, because you've already done it before, or somebody doing it. Hey, that hurts. Well, you form a real strong neural connection of putting your finger in the socket hurts really bad.
So that's what it is a neural connection in your brain.
Correct. Now, a painful neural connection, an experience that's painful, that's real or imagined, okay? The subconscious doesn't know the difference. So if you are focusing on what you don't want, you're reinforcing a neural connection you don't want. But if you start to create a new neural pattern, a new belief, a new habit, a new behavior, a new environment, a new lifestyle, and you reinforce it in a variety of different ways. The brain requires some curiosity and novelty, okay, in order to keep that neuroplasticity switch on. If not, it just goes to sleep. So if you listen to the same affirmation every day for 3 weeks, your brain's gone to sleep 5 weeks ago. So what you want to do is you want to be changing things up. And all the stuff that we do is we say, okay, what are all of the ways to access the non-conscious or subconscious brain? And how do we condition it from a variety of different ways? So is hypnosis good? Yeah, that's a great way. But so is mental contrasting, and so is visualization, and so is subliminal programming, and so is affirmation, so is third party. There's about 10, 12 different ways that you can activate different parts of the brain, but then interrupt its pattern so it's novel, it's creative, it's creating curiosity. So in everything that we teach, it's a matter of, like, for example, will hypnosis work for me? Maybe. It might work for you, but not for you as well. So why stop with that? Like, think about this. Like, what could I do to build my bicep muscle? Well, I could do a curl.
You could curl me.
I could curl him. I could pull up. I could do push-up. I could do 20 different things to build my bicep muscle. But why not my neural muscle? Why not look at what are the tools available and which one resonates best with me? And then we call this inner size, by the way. So when you're building neural muscles, we call it inner size. Physical muscles, exercise, neural muscles, inner size. That's my new book, comes out next year called Inner Size.
Awesome.
Yeah, we own the trademark for that. Inner Size, the new size to unlock your brain's hidden power.
Cool.
So we look for different ways to make sure that people stay engaged, to make sure people are curious, to make sure people are doing what they should be doing in different lanes, different intensities, different frequencies. So we can keep interrupting the brain, keep stressing it like this. If you do 5 pounds of curls every day for a year, you're going to probably be stronger. But if you do 5 pounds for 2 weeks, then 5.5 pounds, and then 7 pounds, and then 9 pounds, you're going to get stronger, right? Whether it's cardiovascular system, lungs, bicep muscle, shoulder muscle, legs, whatever the case is. Well, the brain is the most powerful tool in the universe. No user's manual. Well, guess what we're doing at Neurogym? helping with more of the users.
So if that isn't exciting, it's cool when you hear it really broken down, because then it's like you can, even people that are doing the work, eventually you run up with those old patterns. So it's nice when you can hear someone like John that's putting everything together. And obviously, I want you to share. I had a couple last questions that I wanted you to share about what the Brain-A-Thon was. Sure. And then I had a couple other ones I wanted to end with. So what is the Brain-A-Thon? I was on it last year. I've done many of your programs, actually. Tell me about it.
So I was fascinated with all the stuff we're just talking about. I wanted to know, how does this work? Can I get it to work better? Like, how do I get rid of, fears that I have of not being smart enough, not being good enough? How do I get rid of limiting beliefs, that I have? How do I overcome, any of the stuff that everyone has? Can science give me the answer? So I hired some of the top brain researchers and neuroscientists in the world. And what they shared with me was just, holy mackerel, I want to get this to the world. So I started a company called NeuroGym 4 years ago to be able to do this and to be able to share what I've just shared with you. I learned from the researchers, and then I created my company because of that, because it was so powerful. So I decided a few years ago to do a Brain-A-Thon where I bring some of the smartest people in the world that can also explain stuff. So explain stuff like, if I have anxiety or depression and I'm stressed out and I don't feel like I will ever do well, what should I do? There's a lot of people who want to know that answer. If I'm feeling like I'm too old or too young and life has passed me by or life is just beginning for me and I have these limiting beliefs, what should I do? Well, we know what to do. So I brought these neuroscientists to our studio, and we're for the past few years, and then we're doing another one this year where I interview them. Like Harvard, Srinivasan Pillai, one of the top psychiatrists and neuroimaging experts in the world. Shelley Carson, one of the top experts in the world on using the creative brain to become wealthy. Dr. Heidi Hanna, who is the expert on stress, and that turns stress into the fuel for success. Dr. Jeff Spencer, who has helped 40 Olympic and world champions win gold medals and championships on developing the mindset of a champion. Sarah Mackay from Oxford University, world-class PhD on how to refire your brain, to rewire it. I've got world-class people. It's free. It's all day. People come for 2 hours or 8 hours, and we teach them to do this kind of stuff and say, hey, here's what's going on. And we also bring clients of ours in. Oh, cool. And so we have clients. We've got this year John White, who was depressed, not making enough money, in debt by 90 grand, started by watching one of the Brain-A-Thons and started applying some of the stuff that he learned. He works at Facebook now, makes 6 figures a year, not depressed, got control or custody of his kids. He'll be on. Olia, I can't remember her last name, she'll be on the show. 60-year-old woman. Her husband died. They spent all of their money on trying to beat cancer. She didn't have a job, and she was making $7,000 a year. She couldn't make ends meet. She watched the Brain-A-Thon, applied what she learned. She's cranking out $10,000 to $12,000 a month now. Story after story after story. Last year we had Kat Brahma Brooks, 80 years old, wedding planner on Kauai. Thinks her life is done. Okay, the sun's gonna set, the sale's done. Her business was going, under. Watched the Brain-A-Thon, applied what she learned, $243,000 in income last year. Story after story after story. We'll have about 5 or 6 of them here. Young, old, Caucasian, Asian, white, black, makes no difference. Get the brain working right, life works right.
We're going to have that link down right below, so I hope everyone enjoys that and checks that out.
Check it out.
Thank you.